welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and those of unspecified gender, to part 3 of our Super Smash Bros. DLC costume series. So, this is part 3 of the series. I'm sure you guys have already watched the first 2 parts and you know the rules, but in case you're just jumping in here, 2 general rules that I'm trying to follow for these alternate costume DLC ideas is I'm trying to avoid recolors, because every character already has multiple recolors, and I'm also trying to avoid alt characters wherever possible. Some of these characters didn't really give me much to work with. But with that quick little note about the rules out of the way, since this is part 3, we will be jumping into the newcomers from Smash Brawl. So, we are going in chronological order based on how the characters appear in the Smash Ultimate roster, and with that being said, number 1 on the Brawl character entry would be Meta Knight. Now, Meta Knight actually already has 2 skins that were added in Ultimate that, had they not have been there, probably would have been my first pick for a DLC costume, and that is the skin themed on Galactic Knight and the skin themed on Dark Meta Knight. So, with those already being there and repping the Meta Knight clones from Kirby, I figure Meta Knight's DLC costume really only fitting to bring up the last Meta Knight clone type character, Morpho Knight. We do already sort of have a red Meta Knight skin, but this one, instead of having like the weird vampire bat-like wings, would have the red butterfly wings. It would have like the horn mask, and honestly, Morpho Knight's just kind of sick. Like that, there's really not much more that needs to be said than that. Morpho Knight does look kind of sick. So if I were gonna give a DLC costume to Meta Knight, it would have to be Morpho Knight. Plus, frankly, Meta Knight doesn't give you a whole hell of a lot to work with. But going up from Meta Knight to a character who's got much less to work with, if I'm being honest, number 28 on the Smash roster is Pit. And Pit gave me almost nothing to work with. So ultimately what I decided to do for a DLC skin for Pit is go with the 3 Sacred Treasures being equipped and basically just have armored Pit, essentially, as the DLC skin for Pit. Because with only 2 games to his name, there's really not a whole lot of source material to choose from. However, going from a character who gave me almost nothing to work with to a character who gave me slightly more options, number 29 would be Zero Suit Samus. And Zero Suit Samus actually already has what would have been some of the options there with the swimsuit variants based off of your completion time from the original Metroid. So those are kind of already out by virtue of already being in the game. Instead, I actually decided to go with Cadet Samus. And Cadet Samus is from, I believe, Metroid Other M. And it's just a much younger version of Zero Suit Samus. And seeing as the only part of the Zero Suit that really gets involved in her gameplay is sort of like those jet heals that they gave her, I feel like you could still sort of make that work with Cadet Samus, just essentially give Cadet Samus the jet heals. And then it would still very much work. Plus, it would give Samus a different hairstyle, and I'm always a fan of alt skins that give characters a different hairstyle. I just think it's a really cool look. So after Zero Suit Samus, our next entry in the Smash roster is none other than the big man himself, Wario. Now, Wario does already have 2 different skins. We have the biker outfit for WarioWare, as well as the classic yellow and purple overalls from the Super Mario series. So, with both of Wario's main outfits already being repped, I had to get a little creative here, but one of the options that I thought would be kind of fun would be Zombie Wario, as one of Wario's power-ups from the from the Wario Land series, not Zombieland, totally different thing. So Zombie Wario would be kind of cool. It's really different. However, I don't necessarily think that Nintendo would add Zombie Wario just because it's a zombie. Really? Like, there's not much more that needs to be said. Like, Smash is a family game. That's why we couldn't even get my Shiranui in the background. So I don't think we would go with Zombie Wario. So instead, I think Wario's costume from Mario Golf would actually be a pretty nice option there to add. Because, frankly, it's different enough that I think it would be kind of fun. It doesn't change any of like his hitboxes or anything like that. It does give him a slightly bigger hat, but that's really it. And it does look distinct from the rest of his costumes. So I think Mario Golf's costume for Wario would be my pick for DLC for Wario. And now we're getting into characters where it does sort of skirt the line on the whole different characters thing with number 31, Solid Snake. Now, Solid Snake honestly doesn't really have that many good alt skins in Smash. So I think giving him a better alt skin would be really cool. My first thought did actually go to Venom Snake from Metal Gear Solid 5. But Venom Snake is technically a different character due to convoluted Metal Gear lore that I quite frankly do not have the time or energy to explain in this video. So instead of going with Venom Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4, I decided to go for my pick, Old Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4. This is still technically Solid Snake, and it's only a few years after the previous games. So I think going with Old Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4 would be cool. It is a distinct character by virtue of having a different hairstyle, the eye patch, and the whole thing. So I think Old Snake would actually be kind of cool. After that, our next entry is Ike, who does already have two skins, starting to sense a pattern here once we get into characters from Brawl, where we have Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn Ike already in the game, referencing his appearance in Brawl and then Smash 4. However, Ike only really appears in those two games. There's not a lot to work with for Ike. However, while I was looking for some ideas, I did stumble across Ike's costume from Fire Emblem Awakening, which is either an amiibo thing or DLC. Frankly, I don't remember. I haven't played Awakening. But I think Fire Emblem Awakening Ike is really cool. It's a lot more of a slimmed down look compared to his Radiant Dawn, Path of Radiance, whichever one the second one was, where he gets all like crazy buff. His Smash 4 costume. It's a lot more slimmed down. It looks a little bit futuristic-y, almost. So I think Awakening Ike would actually be a pretty solid pick there for Ike. Now here's where I once again kind of have to break my rule of not pulling other characters with the Pokemon Trainer, repping slots number 33 through 35. And I'm also sort of breaking my not as strict rule, but my rule that I was trying to follow for not pulling costumes from outside of the games. I know Nintendo doesn't even really stick super hard to this rule, given that half of Cloud's skins are based on his Advent Children appearance. We will discuss that in the next video. But I did try mostly to stick to appearances of characters from within the games. Pokemon Trainer can't really do it. So instead, for the trainer themselves, I decided to go ahead and pick Ash from the Gen 1 anime. Because, let's be honest, when most people see the Pokemon Trainer, unless they're super familiar with Pokemon, they probably just think it's Ash. So I decided to go with Ash, and following that line of logic, I actually decided to stick to mostly anime-inspired skins for the Pokemon themselves. So for Squirtle, I decided to give him the 6 shades that Ash's Squirtle had as the leader of the Squirtle Squad. And also, there really wasn't much else to give to Squirtle. However, Squirtle at least gave me something. Ivysaur had to get a little creative, and I actually wound up picking this fun option that I found where it's an Ivysaur themed after the Substitute doll that was created by somebody named Nano over on Game Banana. Big shout out to you, Nano. Thank you for creating this and giving me literally anything to work with for Ivysaur. Charizard by virtue of being Pokemon's poster boy right after Pikachu, I actually had too many options to narrow down, but since we did go with Ash's Squirtle from the Gen 1 anime, I decided to kind of stick to Gen 1 for Charizard and went with Charizard 2, or Clone Charizard, from Pokemon the first movie. Now, it's not a major difference on Charizard. The only major difference there is the markings all across it, including right there on the face and a little bit on the legs. But I think it's different enough that it kind of works. Plus, it kind of ties back into Mewtwo, which is kind of fun. So that wraps up the Pokemon trainer. Our next choice is Diddy Kong, and Diddy Kong also didn't give me a whole lot of options. My initial thought was perhaps to go with Dixie Kong, but again, I'm trying to avoid using different characters. So I then also thought about perhaps Donkey Kong Jr., but kind of had to throw Donkey Kong Jr. out because some of Diddy's animations involved messing with his hat, and then he doesn't have a hat as Donkey Kong Jr. So frankly, I did at the end of the day sort of decide to just go back to Dixie Kong, just because you don't have much to work with Diddy. I know we even already have a Dixie Kong themed alt for Diddy, but it's a monkey in a hat and a t-shirt. That you gotta give me something to work with here, Nintendo. So yeah, if you guys have any better ideas for Diddy Kong, feel free to drop those in the comments, because quite frankly, I could not come up with much better than just throwing in Dixie Kong. Now, on to number 37, we have Lucas. And Lucas, actually, I had a couple of ideas for Lucas. My initial thought was to actually go with the earliest version of Lucas, so the beta Lucas, if you will, from back when the game was still supposed to be Earthbound 64, rather than Mother 3. But ultimately, I don't know that many people would know that reference or that character, so decided against going with Beta Lucas, as I'm calling it. And instead, I chose Commander Lucas, which is a costume that he actually puts on at some point in the events of Mother 3. Not super familiar, haven't played Mother 3. I live in America, and we didn't get Mother 3. Thanks a lot, Reggie. So, don't know the story behind that, but it is actually an outfit worn in-game by Lucas, and it is rather different from the rest of his outfits. So I think Commander Lucas would actually be pretty good there. And now we're finally getting into a character where I had some good choices. Number 38, Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, for Sonic the Hedgehog, one of my initial first thoughts was Sonic Boom. Probably because when I was initially coming up with these ideas, I was coming right off of having watched the Sonic Boom cartoon. Really good cartoon, highly recommend it. But I decided against that because technically Sonic Boom Sonic is a significantly taller version of Sonic, and if we want to keep him with the same proportions as Smash Sonic, it would just look kind of weird. So decided to scrap Sonic Boom Sonic. My next thought was Sonic wearing Link's outfit from the Legend of Zelda DLC levels in the Wii U version of Sonic Lost World, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's Sonic dressed up as Link, complete with sword and shield and everything. That's literally just Sonic cosplaying another character that's already on the roster, so I decided against that, and instead decided to go with Darkspine Sonic. I'll be honest, I don't remember what game this is from. I think it's Sonic and the Secret Rings. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. But all I do know is this design for Sonic looks absolutely sick. The purple purple fur, the white stripes, the pupilless eyes, this is just a sick looking version of Sonic. Plus, it would help him to stand out from most of the other versions of the Sonic skins that we have, which all keep the fur to some tone of blue, mostly. I think there's that one black one. Either way, the majority of Sonic's alts, not super great. So I think Darkspine Sonic would really help him to kind of stand out a little bit. So yeah, ultimately, Darkspine Sonic is my choice for a DLC skin for Sonic the Hedgehog. Next up, though, is King Dedede. And following the trend of Kirby characters giving me basically nothing to work with, King DDD gave me basically nothing to work with. But I did find one option, however it is for a game that did release after Smash, so the legitimacy of this option is contentious at best. But it's kind of the only thing that I could find, so I was going with King DDD's appearance from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's not very different from base DDD, the main difference being that the coat is a little bit bigger and has those like feather things sticking out of the collar. That's really the main difference there. So it's not a super big change, but again, DDD doesn't give you a whole lot to work with. So Forgotten Land DDD would be the DLC costume for King DDD. And I'm now tired of saying the letter D. Next up, though, is number 40, Olimar, probably the character that I had the least amount of hours in because I only ever played him in Classic mode. God, I hate Olimar. But Olimar does actually kind of force me to break my rule of character options of not picking another character. Mostly because Olimar starts off by already having half of his skins being another character. So that does open up that option. So I was thinking we could possibly bring in some other Pikmin characters since they're all basically the same size and would play the exact same. So I was thinking maybe Olimar having his skin for Brittany or Charlie. But then, once again, going back to games that have come out since Smash Ultimate's release, I remembered Pikmin 4 is a thing. So I was thinking instead of picking a different character like Brittany or Charlie, instead, why not go with Leafling Olimar, or as I call it, Elmo. It's literally just Elmo. Like, come on, look at that and tell me you don't see Elmo. But yeah, it's Leafling Olimar from Pikmin 4. It's still Olimar, but you're losing the helmet and instead replacing it all with like red fur. He would still play the exact same, the hitboxes wouldn't change, and honestly, I just kind of like Fuzzy Olimar. I think he looks fun. Now, up next is every furry's favorite Pokemon ever, Lucario. Now, for Lucario, the easiest answer, if I didn't want to avoid picking recolors, is to just bring in Shiny Lucario because for some reason, Smash Bros. Hates Shiny Pokemon. But since, like I said at the beginning, I am trying to avoid simple recolors because the idea of making people pay for recolors is lame and stupid. Instead, I decided to go with one of Lucario's Unite costumes, the one that kind of reminds me of Sir Aaron from the Lucario Pokemon movie. I believe it's movie 8. Don't quote me on that either. But yeah, I kind of like that because it actually reminds me too of, God, I forget the guy's name, but the trainer who gives you the Riolu egg in Diamond and Pearl. Kind of reminds me of his outfit, as well as the trainer who had Lucario from the movie. So it kind of ties it into a little bit of Pokemon history there. And also it just gives Lucario a cape. And capes look sick. Come on, who doesn't love a good cape? Now, so with Unite Lucario out of the way, next up is Smash Bros. Playable toy, Rob. And for Rob, one of my initial thoughts was Rob themed after a different gaming system, such as Wii Rob, which I believe is from Project M. And that one, while cool, is sort of just making something up. Rather than making something up, I thought we could reference another existing thing, and instead of like just creating something, go with a Virtual Boy themed Rob and have the face of Rob sort of be like the head of the Virtual Boy. Yes, you're still sort of making it up along the way, but then you're also getting another Nintendo reference in there. And I did find this example here that was created by JDMH over on DeviantArt. Thank you for that. And honestly, it looks kind of sick. I like the Virtual Boy console as Rob's face. It's just a cool look. Now, almost being done with our Brawl newcomers. Next up is number 43, Toon Link. So, Toon Link actually has a surprising amount of good options. They give Toon Link a number of costumes throughout his games. One of the first ones that came to my mind is actually Spirit Tracks Link, because he does actually already show up in the game if you pick the Spirit Tracks stage and don't have anybody playing Link. You'll actually see Spirit Tracks Toon Link being the conductor of the train. So that would be kind of cool, and the model quite literally already exists in the game. But then I also thought, nah, that'd be too easy because the model already exists in the game. And instead, what if we went with like Outset Toon Link from the beginning of Wind Waker? I think. Haven't played Wind Waker. But it's just essentially Link without the hat, blue shirt. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Breath of the Wild Link, so that would be a fun little nod there. And honestly, I just like seeing more variants of Link without the hat. It's kind of cool. Plus, Toon Link doesn't have a hatless variant. Let Toon Link go without the hat. Now, for the last Brawl newcomer, we have the boy himself, Wolf. Every furry's other favorite character. And Wolf, similar to the other Star Fox characters, had a handful of options, but I kind of had to get a little creative. One of my first thoughts was to go back and bring the initial costume that Wolf had back in Brawl, and make that his costume. However, I don't like the idea of charging people for costumes that were in a previous game. I don't know why, something about it just doesn't sit right with me. So instead, I decided to go with Wolf's skin from Star Fox Assault, which kind of drops a lot of the purple color scheme, makes it a little more blue, kind of tones down the edge that he's got for his default skin in Ultimate. And honestly, I like that pose. He got that power pose there. Made me think, you know what? This guy deserves his spot. Put this skin in Smash. But with Wolf, that does actually round out our entries from Brawl. So, let me know what you think. If you like my ideas, go ahead and let me know in the comments if you have some preferences that you would much rather seen, or even just if you think my ideas are stupid. And